Welcome to video 6 in the Introduction to Human Resource Management series. So far we've looked at, in video 1 we talked about the evolution of human resource management through the years. In video 2 we looked at strategic human resource management, how we execute strategic human resource management. In video 3 we talked about HR planning. In the fourth video we looked at recruitment and selection, and in the last video, video 5, we looked at training and development. In this video we're going to talk about theories of motivation. We're going to talk from the perspective of improving the quality of work life, bringing out the best in our employees. So we've recruited the right individuals, we've provided them with the best KSAOs, knowledge, skills, abilities, and we've tried to provide the training so they acquire the requisite attributes. So we need to add motivation to the KSAOs to bring about the performance that we want from our members of staff. So in today's video we would be looking at motivation in the workplace. Now just stop and think. As the HR manager at your company, how would you go about trying to ensure a motivated workforce? That may be a more difficult task than you would think it is. And let me give you an example. As a newly promoted manager, you implement a system that allows members of staff within your department to work extra hours every evening, as well as one day extra on the weekend. This arrangement allows for earning significant overtime, and you believe this would motivate them. Before too long, however, you realize that their motivation has waned or diminished or reduced, and in some cases they have even become disgruntled or angry or annoyed. Why do you think this is likely to be the case, and how can you address it? So if we want to spend some time thinking about this situation, one might think that, okay, I've provided an opportunity for them to make overtime, and some persons are not appreciative of that. And we could look at that through several lenses. One of the lenses through which we could look at that is the traditional approach to motivation talked about the economic man. Man being a person who is after money. But if you look at Maslow's hierarchy of needs, you would realize that there are several levels of needs. The first level is the physiological needs, basic physiological needs, food, clothing, shelter, etc. Then there may be persons at a level of safety needs, there may be persons at a level of belongingness needs, there may be persons at a level of esteem needs, or persons at self-actualization. So if the persons that you're dealing with are not operating from the perspective of the economic man, they are not operating from the perspective of food, clothing, shelter, they prefer to be home, spending time with their families, you could understand why they would be annoyed. They prefer to be at the university improving their qualifications, you could understand why they would be annoyed. And if you look at it from the perspective of expectancy theory, as we were discussing a bit, it talks about valence, and valence talks about finding value in the reward that is provided. So that which you're attempting to motivate me with, I must actually want that more than I do not want it, or more than I must want that option more than any other option that can be presented in order for me to be motivated. So gone are the days where we operate from the perspective of the economic man and we think that everybody could be motivated by money or overtime. So in terms of the simplest definition of motivation, we could simply say how hard an individual would work or how much they would apply themselves towards achieving something. And the motivation can be intrinsic, comes from within, or it could be extrinsic, external factors. So in the workplace, it refers to ensuring that the appropriate conditions, the management or the employers ensuring that the appropriate conditions and variables are present to stimulate sustained energy and enthusiasm in a predetermined direction or towards the predetermined activities and goals by members of staff. So management behaving in a way to ensure persons direct their energy and enthusiasm towards what the organization would like to achieve. There are various foundations of motivation. We could talk from the perspective of the traditional approach, which is the economic man. And the economic man, it comes from the work of Frederick in his work on scientific management, where the emphasis was on increased pay to meet increased output. So increase output and you get increased pay. So you measure the work, you divide the work, and the greater amount of work that can be done, the greater pay that would be provided. So the greater pay that you would want, the greater amount of work that you would do. That's the traditional approach. You also had the human relations approach. And the human relations approach, or the social man approach, there was reduced emphasis on economic rewards with increased emphasis on congenial work groups and a positive work environment. Elton Mayo did that work back then when he looked at the Hawthorne studies and realized that persons having decent relationships with their co-workers, decent relationships with their supervisor, persons having a positive work environment within which to work provided a source of motivation, in addition to, or in some cases more so than, the traditional economic man approach. We subsequently had the human resource approach, and the human resource approach talks about the whole person. Yes, the need for extrinsic elements such as money and a positive work environment or positive relations with your colleagues, but it also talked about a desire to feel good about one's effort and one's output. So Douglas McGregor talked about theory X and theory Y, identifying that there are individuals who simply want to do a good job. They see work as natural as play, and they really want to unleash their creativity. So if you can make the work meaningful, if you can make the work where the individual is prepared to go beyond that which is required by virtue of his specific duties as may be described in the job description, or that for which they are compensated, if you could create that kind of environment in terms of the value of the work or the meaning of the work, then an individual would be motivated to continue working long and hard. So those were the three main foundations of motivation. The contemporary approach suggests there would be content theories, process theories, and reinforcement theories towards motivating employees within the workplace. And we would spend some time now having a conversation on these three areas. Content theories, they emphasize the needs that motivate individuals. Needs theories are based on the premise that psychological or physiological insufficiency would create that kind of pressure on individuals, and in an attempt to reduce that pressure or reduce that tension, it influences their behavior. So based on the needs you're attempting to have satisfied, you're going to behave in a particular way within the organization. Some of the content theories, or the ones that we would talk about in this discussion, include Maslow's hierarchy of needs. You had Clayton Alderfer talking about the ERG theory, existence, relatedness, and growth. We talk about that. We had Frederick Herzberg talking about the two-factor theory. We'd spend some time looking at that. And we had David McClelland, who talks about the acquired needs theory. In addition to the content theories, there were process theories. And process theories are essentially theories that explain a rational approach by which employees select behaviors they would engage in within the organization. And the theories we'd look at in this discussion, we'd look at John Stacy Adams' equity theory. We look at Victor Vroom, expectancy theory, and we would look at Edwin Locke and his discussion on goal setting. So we look at those areas in this discussion by way of our process theories. And then of course we have the reinforcement theory, and it says it's a motivation theory based on the relationship between a given behavior and its consequences, also referred to as behavior modification. So we would talk about that as well in the discussion that we want to have. So as we progress into this discussion, as I mentioned before, it's important to recognize that motivation is not a straightforward process. It's not a one-size-fits-all process, as we've seen from the example that we provided. It's not a one-size-fits-all, and no theory would be perfect, or no theory would account for everything that's going on within the organization. But what the theory would do, they would provide us with the ability to predict behaviors based on measures that we may choose to implement within the workspace. So as we think about organizations that we may be working for that may ask us for support in terms of improving levels of motivation, or as we think of an organization that may give us that kind of consultancy to help to assist them in improving their levels of motivation among members of staff, we need to keep these things in mind. So let's talk about Maslow's hierarchy of need as the first theory we're going to look at. It's one of the more popular theories of motivation, one of the more popular needs theory or content theory of motivation. Maslow proposes that motivation is the result of a person's attempt at fulfilling 5 basic needs. Physiological needs, example food, clothing, shelter, certainty, homeostasis, etc. Safety needs, where an individual wants to be free from harm, whether it's physical or psychological harm. Social needs or belongingness, that need to belong to a part of a group, that need to feel wanted, etc. Esteem needs, which along the lines of status, recognition, and self-actualization needs, talk in terms of an individual fulfilling what they believe to be their purpose, their reason for existence, or the goals, that the life goals that they have set themselves, an individual progressing in that direction. Now, in terms of Maslow, key principles of his model would be, he believed that the needs exist in a hierarchical order. So you must progress in this order. And he has what is called the progression principle, which suggests that lower level needs must be met before you could progress to higher level needs. For example, you must satisfy your physiological needs, and then you would progress to your safety needs, and then you would progress to social needs. Or said differently, you would not necessarily be thinking about social needs or esteem needs if you're not satisfying the lower level needs of basic physiological food, clothing, and shelter, and safety. That's one of the principles of his model. The deficit principle also claims that once a need is satisfied, it is no longer a motivator, because an individual will take action to satisfy only unmet needs. So Maslow is also saying, once you're satisfied with your food, clothing, and shelter as provided by your job, then you would no longer, that would not necessarily be a major influencer of your behavior. It's probably one of the reasons why people talk about the economic man model. The traditional approach of giving more money would never really be a form of motivation. Increased pay would never really be a form of motivation. And when we begin to discuss Herzberg in a while, be patient, we'll discuss Herzberg in a while. Herzberg actually describes it not in the context of a motivator, but in the context of something that just have to be present in order for an individual to not be dissatisfied. We'll talk about that in a bit. Now, Clayton Alderfer, he built on the work that was done by Abraham Maslow, and he agreed that there are different sets of needs an individual would have. He used the model ERG, existence, relatedness, and growth. And he looked at the lower level of Maslow's model, physiological needs, safety, security needs, etc., as existence needs. And if the workplace is providing for an individual's existence needs, that's the first level of motivation. But the organization must also be concerned with an individual's relatedness needs, which would talk about social needs or belongingness needs, and would also talk about that need to have recognition, that need to be acknowledged, that need to have rewards or to feel that sense of significance within the organization. Perhaps the need for advancement within the organization, the need for achievement within the organization. And of course, growth needs would also fall within the esteem needs and the ability to self-actualize, to feel like if you're doing what you're here to do. So Clayton Alderfer looked at it from the perspective of existence, relatedness, and growth needs. But one of the differentiating factors with Clayton Alderfer is that he agreed that there's the progression principle, that persons would attempt to satisfy lower level needs and then progress to the higher level needs. But he also talks about the frustration regression principle, which he says that if a person progresses to higher level needs and they are not satisfied or they are not making the progress that they would want to make, they will become frustrated, and as a result of their frustration, they would regress to the previous state or a lower level need and would attempt to strengthen satisfaction in that regard. So you're attempting to be a person of significance or within the organization or within your life, but because you're struggling in that regard, you may regress to social needs and just try to be perhaps a more congenial type individual, perhaps a friendlier individual, perhaps a more popular individual, perhaps increased levels of a need for affiliation, warmth, and friendship within the organization, because it's difficult to progress to perhaps the top management level where you have that power, you have that significance that you might have been going after. Or in some cases, if you're not able to progress to that level, you're just content to just make money, and maybe over time might be your goal. I'm not trying to get to the top, I'm just trying to make some more money to take care of my family, to give my family the best possible care. So a person not able to progress in terms of growth needs may find themselves regressing to lower level needs and making more of an effort to strengthen those needs rather than to continue aspiring to the higher level needs. That's one of the differentiating factors with Clayton Alderfer's ERG theory. So again, within the workplace, in order for, according to Maslow, persons could be motivated by having their basic physiological needs met and their safety and security met. So they have safety of tenure or security of tenure, they could continue to work, there's a safe work environment. So according to Maslow and Clayton Alderfer, these must be met within the workplace. Now the organizations that you may be looking at, to what extent are these met, or to what extent is there improvement? And if you are able to bring about improvement in these areas, according to these theories, Clayton Alderfer and Maslow, you can increase motivation. To what extent does the organization have social needs and esteem needs covered or taken care of? If they are absent and you're able to cause them to be present or to exist within the organization, you can improve motivation according to this theory. If there are opportunities for self-actualization or for persons to grow within the organization, they can be motivated. Now we have Frederick Herzberg, who talked about the two-factor theory. And in his two-factor theory, he's kind of disagreeing with Maslow and Alderfer, in the sense he's saying that working conditions, relationship amongst members of staff, the policies, the rules, the quality of interaction and supervision, salary, compensation. These things are not motivators. These things are what he referred to as hygiene factors. They must be present within the workplace for persons to not be dissatisfied. Their absence would cause persons to be dissatisfied, but their presence do not motivate. So, in the words of the model, improving the motivator factors increases job satisfaction. Motivator factors would be achievement, recognition, responsibility, the work itself that an individual is doing, advancement, opportunities for personal growth. So the more they exist, the more a person is likely to be motivated and satisfied. However, improving hygiene factors such as the working conditions, co-worker relations, do not increase satisfaction, but they decrease dissatisfaction. So a person is not going to be dissatisfied if their salary is decent and their work environment is decent and the work conditions are decent. They're not going to be dissatisfied. But they're not going to be as satisfied, or they're not going to be satisfied if there are not opportunities for advancement, for recognition. So essentially, he's saying that growth goals are what would motivate an individual within the workspace. So Herzberg would have done his research and come up with these findings and made these conclusions and are making these recommendations. So you could look at it from the perspective of Clayton, Alderfer or Maslow, or you could look at it from the perspective of Herzberg and saying it doesn't matter if we improve their salary, we need to do that, otherwise they would be dissatisfied. But in addition to doing these things, there must always also be opportunities for growth and recognition, the work itself, and we will talk about job design in a subsequent discussion. The work itself must be designed in a way to serve as a motivator. That's Herzberg two-factor theory. David McClelland, he looked at it from a different perspective. And what he said is that individuals acquire needs through their life. And these needs within the organization could manifest themselves in terms of a need for achievement, which is the desire to accomplish something difficult, attain a high standard of success, master complex tasks, or surpass others. So if an individual has a need for achievement and the organization does not possess these opportunities, they're likely to not be challenged and they're likely to not be motivated. So the organization should provide that opportunity in terms of a need for achievement. There must also be a need for affiliation. And the need for affiliation is the desire to form close personal relationships, avoid conflicts, and establish warm friendships. If the organization is not making an effort in that regard to strengthen the bond among co-workers, to increase that warmth and friendship among co-workers, to increase that affiliation among co-workers, a person so motivated would not be motivated within that workplace because their need for affiliation is not being satisfied. And then McClelland also talks about the need for power. And the need for power is the desire to influence or control others, to be responsible for others, or to have authority over others. If persons are motivated in that way and these things do not exist within the organization, they're likely to not be motivated. So McClelland is saying, yes, you're going to have to provide food, clothing, and shelter, safety, security, etc. You're also going to have to provide the growth needs in terms of opportunities for advancement, opportunities to be in charge of others, opportunities for belonging, for that congenial environment for persons to function. You're going to have to accompany those needs with these needs which people would acquire as they progress through their organizational life, through their careers. So McClelland also talks about motivation within the workplace from the needs perspective, and those are the content theories that we're going to talk about, which speaks to needs that people would have within the organization. We just talked about here the need for achievement, the need for affiliation, the need for power, and of course there would be pros and cons to each, and as an individual a judicious mixture of these needs would be required in order for you to be the best quality employee that you can be. You can't be high in a need for achievement because you may not necessarily be one of the better co-workers to be around. You can't be high in a need for affiliation because you may be after friendship and warmth and congenial conditions. You may not necessarily be the best kind of supervisor or the best person in terms of achieving the goals of the organization. You can have a high need for power because it's likely that you are going to want to do things just to get power, just to dominate, and of course that may not be in the best interest of the organization. As a result of that, as an individual, a judicious mixture of the three is required. So we talked about content theories. Now let's shift attention to process theories, and the first one we're going to talk about is equity theory. And John Stacy Adams, in his equity theories, he talks about a focus on individuals' perceptions of how fairly they are treated relative to others within the workplace. As an employee, how fairly am I treated relative to others employees? And it's evaluated on the basis of a ratio of inputs to outcomes when compared to others. And in terms of input, he talks about experience. What am I bringing to the table? I'm bringing a certain level of experience. I'm bringing a certain quality of skills. I'm bringing specific knowledge, the energy and effort required to do what I have to do, the time, the responsibility that I have, the flexibility or inflexibility that I have, the characteristics of the work, whether it's dangerous, monotonous, complex. So all these are inputs. And if my inputs are the same as another employee within the organization, but their outcome, and when we talk about outcome, their salary, their reward, their bonuses, their security, their recognition, their promotion, the learning and development opportunities, the working conditions, if they are better than those that I am afforded, I will see myself as being treated as unfair within the workplace. When I look at my input and I look at other people's inputs and I look at my outcome and I look at other people's outcome, I must feel as if I'm treated fairly. I must perceive the way I'm treated as fairly. If I do not believe that I am treated fairly, there are options in which I might engage. I might want to change inputs. And when I say change input, increase or decrease inputs. For example, an underpaid individual may reduce their level of enthusiasm. An underpaid individual may abuse their leave eligibility. They will take all their sick leave, etc. But if I feel like I'm overpaid, I would be willing to increase my level of effort. And in some cases, persons would even be willing to accept a pay freeze, or in some cases a pay cut, because they believe that what they're contributing to the organization in relation to others is minimal. That's the pressure that the inequity may place on them. A person who feels that they are unfairly treated as well may even attempt to change the outcomes. So they may request an increase in salary rather than simply just decreasing their input or decreasing their enthusiasm or energy or anything like that. They may request an increase in salary to bring things a little equal. They may request a promotion. They may request a reclassification to make things equal. And if they're unable to change their inputs, reduce their inputs accordingly, if they're unable to change their incomes, they may distort perception to make themselves less than frustrated, to make themselves motivated. They may actually distort perception to the extent that in their own mind they artificially increase the status attached to their job or distort others' perceived rewards. For example, one person that have been working with, and I'll just share this example real quickly. Two persons were getting an increased phone allowance than the other two persons within the organization, and one of the persons was actually making the point that I am the supervisor, so I don't really have to make that many calls, because the supervisor was actually getting less than the employees in terms of their phone allowance, which made no sense. But they distort the perception in order to not feel any sense of uneasiness as a result of that. And if you're treated unfairly within the workplace and you're not in a position to withhold your enthusiasm and your effort, or you're not in a position to get the increase that you think you deserve, you're not effectively distorting perception, or you're not exercising that option, you're likely to quit the job. Those are options that people can exercise when they feel as if they are unfairly treated. So that's one of the process theories that we're looking at that would account for motivation. So if the organization with which you have the opportunity to work, or that you are privileged to serve, if there's an issue of inequity or unfairness, you may want to address those in order to provide, for the very least, hygiene factors, or in some cases, increase motivation for members of staff. Second process theory we'll look at is Victor Vroom's expectancy theory. Expectancy theory suggests that motivation depends on an individual's expectations about their ability to perform a task and receive a desired reward. Now, there are three elements to expectancy theory: expectancy, instrumentality, and valence. Expectancy answers the question, will my effort lead to high performance? If I work real hard, would my effort lead to high performance? If I don't think so, if I don't think I have the skills, if I don't think I have the resources, if I don't think the equipment exists at the organization, if I don't think my supervisors are going to support me, I'm not going to expect that my effort would lead to that kind of performance. Now, the second element is instrumentality. Will my performance lead to outcomes that I'm after? So I can make the effort, and I expect that the effort that I can make can produce an outstanding performance. But would the outstanding performance lead to a reward that I'm after? I work my tail off. Would I really get that kind of performance that would allow me to get that promotion that I'm after? And the third element is valence, which we talked about. The rewards that I'm going to get, are they of value to me? Do I really want them? If I really want that promotion, then I'm going to work myself up. Expectancy, if I do these things, I would produce a solid performance. A solid performance would allow me to be recognized, and that recognition would allow me to get the promotion that I'm after. So if that exists within the organization, that kind of fairness, that kind of transparency, that kind of process exists within the organization, I'm likely to be motivated to work hard to produce the performance to get the reward. If there are no rewards within the organization, or if there's no transparency, or if I don't have confidence in people's willingness to do that which is required in a fair way, I'm not going to push myself. So that's another area you can look at within the organization that you might be tackling. And then the final process theory we'd look at is Edwin Locke's goal setting theory. And he talks about within the organization setting SMART goals. Once an individual is setting a goal within the organization and they are going after the goal, they're going to improve. They're going to bring a different kind of work ethic. They're going to bring a different kind of character to the workplace. Talks about goals must be specific. If you really want to motivate individuals, the goals must be specific. They must be clear. They must be unambiguous. They must be precise. They must be measurable so an individual will know if they're progressing. They must be actionable or attainable. Persons must be able to take actions that are required to fulfill them. They must be realistic, reasonable, not too far outside of the reach of individuals, and there must be a time frame in order for goals to be effectively set within an organization. Edwin Locke also talks about involving individuals or involving employees in the goal setting process. So they must be a part of the goal setting process. Occasionally there must be performance meetings. Let's talk about performance issues. What do we need to do to increase the likelihood of members of staff being able to take the kinds of action that would allow for the effective execution or implementation or progress in terms of goals? The organization must also ensure relevant focus on execution culture. People's ability to focus on the goals that are set. Daily attention must be paid to the goals that are set. Feedback must be ongoing. Persons must be provided with feedback. They must be aware of the extent to which they are doing those things, they're on the right path, or the extent to which changes may be required in their behaviors or in their performance. And the organization must reward goal accomplishment. Once you could set goals and you could keep persons on course towards achieving the goals, and you are prepared to reward the goals, according to Edwin Locke, these things would serve as motivation within an organization. This is another angle that you could look at with your organization. Could you look at setting goals, involving persons in setting goals, targets, and support them in going after the targets that may be set? So this is another means of treating with motivation. This is the third and final process theory that we are going to talk about. And the final area we're going to look at is reinforcement theory. And reinforcement theory, as we discussed earlier, is a theory that looks at a set of reinforcement techniques that promote certain kinds of behaviors or inhibit certain kinds of behaviors within an organization. So we're saying behavior modification is the term given to a set of techniques by which reinforcement theory is used to modify behavior within organizations. The term reinforcement refers to anything that causes a behavior to be repeated or discontinued. Any activity that I engage in, any action that I take that would cause the behavior to be repeated or discontinued would be considered reinforcement. And reinforcement is tied to the principle of effect, where the principle of effect say, if I feel good about the outcome, I'm going to continue. If I feel bad, I'm going to discontinue. If I like what you're saying or doing in relation to how I behave, I'm going to continue. If I don't like it, if I don't feel good about it, I'm going to discontinue that kind of behavior. And there are different reinforcement techniques. One, there's positive reinforcement. And within the organization, positive reinforcement is the administration of a pleasant and rewarding consequence following desired behavior. Does that exist within your organization? Behaviors are likely to continue when positively reinforced. A good example of positive reinforcement is immediate praise for an employee who arrives on time or does a little extra in his or her work. The pleasant consequence will increase the likelihood of excellent work behavior occurring again. That's positive reinforcement. If that doesn't exist within the organization, could that be attempted? There's also negative reinforcement, or in some cases described as avoidance learning, and you'd have to understand the nuance here. Avoidance learning is the removal of an unpleasant consequence following a desired behavior. The removal of an unpleasant consequence following a desired behavior. So when employees, if you constantly reprimand an employee for coming late, for example, and the employee comes early and they are not reprimanded, obviously they would not be, they would now avoid coming late because they realize that they are avoiding the reprimand. When they avoid coming late, they avoid the reprimand. So avoidance learning occurs when a supervisor stops criticizing or reprimanding an employee once the incorrect behavior has stopped. So he's no longer coming late, we're no longer going to reprimand him. And that is going to encourage him to to stop coming late. That's avoidance learning or negative reinforcement. It's a form of reinforcement. You're removing the unpleasant consequence or experience, and because it is removed, the employee would like it to remain in that way, removed, and as a result of that, they're going to do the right thing. A quick example is sometimes an employee may go on daily paid in some organizations because they abuse sick leave. Once they're on daily paid, they're not going to get their salaries at the same time at the end of the month with all employees. They would have to calculate the number of days that they work, and in some cases their salaries may be up to 2 weeks late. Once they begin to come to work with consistency, they're not abusing their sick leave or overtaking sick leave, they would go back onto monthly payment. Now they want to avoid daily payment, so they would be motivated to come to work. They want to avoid being on daily paid system, so they would be motivated to come to work as regularly as needed. A third technique is punishment, and punishment is the imposition of unpleasant outcomes on an employee, and it would typically occur following undesirable behavior. If persons are being punished within an organization for behaviors that are not undesirable, then of course punishment would not be effectively applied within such an organization. But punishment could be simply as a supervisor berating an employee for performing a task incorrectly. In doing so, the supervisor expects the negative outcome would serve as a punishment and reduce the likelihood of the behavior recurring. In several organizations, it must be said, punishment is seen as controversial and it's often criticized. It's said that when you punish an individual, you do not point out the correct behaviors that they should be engaging in. You're just punishing the individual. But in a lot of cases, it's almost necessary in order to get rid of undesirable behaviors within organization. So you could see to what extent punishment may be an effective measure within the organization that you have the privilege to work for. And we're winding down here. We're almost finished. We're going to talk about extinction. And extinction is the withdrawal of a positive reward. So whereas with punishment, the supervisor imposes an unpleasant outcome such as a reprimand, with extension it involves withholding praises, pay raises, or any other positive outcome. Because I withhold your pay, because I withhold any kind of positive outcome that you're after, you are likely to behave in a different way. The undesirable behavior is likely to become extinct because you would like to be the recipient of the positive experience. Kind of like in the example that I just shared. Your inconsistency, your abuse of sick leave, your overuse of your sick days would be extinct because you want the pleasant experience of being paid within the monthly paid system. So these are some techniques in terms of the reinforcement theory. Final thing we're going to look at in this discussion is schedule of reinforcements. And schedule of reinforcement talks about the frequency with which and intervals over which reinforcement occurs. So there could be continuous reinforcement schedules where we're going to just continually, on every occasion, we're going to praise the desired behavior. So it's a schedule in which every occurrence of the desired behavior is reinforced. And then there's partial reinforcement schedule, a schedule in which only some occurrences of the desired behavior are reinforced. Why would you choose one over another or one over the other? Why would you choose continuous reinforcement schedule versus a partial reinforcement schedule. That's some critical thinking for you to engage in. So essentially that brings us to the end of the discussion that we wanted to have on motivation within organizations. What we're saying essentially, motivation is how hard an individual might work within the organization. We are making the point that it's not a one size fits all, it's not a clear black or white situation. There are lots of gray areas. Different people may be motivated in different ways. We talked about some of the content theories or the needs theories. We talked about Abraham Maslow. We talked about Clayton Alderfer in terms of the hierarchy of needs and the existence and relatedness and growth theory. We also talk about Frederick Herzberg two-factor theory, where one is hygiene factors and others are motivators. And we also talked about David McClelland in terms of needs an individual may acquire within the organization. You could look to these areas in terms of improving your organization. We also talked about process theories, where we looked at John Stacy Adams' equity theory. Are persons being treated unfairly within the organization? If so, they may be demotivated, and if you address these areas, they're likely to be motivated. We also talked about expectancy theory, Victor Vroom. If a person believes that if they work hard, they're going to get a kind of performance that would allow them to receive a reward that is meaningful to them, they're going to push in that direction. So there's an area you can look at as well. And we talk about Edwin Locke in terms of setting goals for individuals, involving them in the goal setting process, and supporting them in going after their goals with performance meetings, with helping them to remain on focus, with ongoing feedback, etc. And finally, we talked about reinforcement theory or behavior modification, modifying behavior by either providing pleasant reinforcement or pleasant stimuli or unpleasant experiences which would discontinue a particular behavior. Good. So guys, wishing you all the best as you attempt to improve your organizations, or as you attempt to serve as a consultant to other organizations as perhaps a sideline activity. So all the best. See you in the next video.